I want to welcome you to the 938 podcast today. And my name is Craig Stevenson, and I'm an Associate Mission Director here with the Baptist Bible Fellowship International Mission Office in Springfield, Missouri. And we're excited to have you. Got a great lineup for you today. We have Eric Starrett with us today from Seminole Baptist Church. He's the student pastor, a longtime student pastor at Seminole, and has done a great job and continues to do a great job with students there at Seminole. And looking really forward to talking with you a little bit today as we kind of walk through a little bit about student ministry and then more specifically about students and missions. And but before we get into all that, I want to encourage you to go click subscribe and like and share this video on all of your social media accounts. And obviously we would appreciate that. And so let's get started. Eric Starrett, the man, the myth, the legend, right? So Eric, let's just start with you giving us a little bit of information about yourself.
Yeah.
So tell us about your wife, your family, how long you've been at Seminole, your ministry, what all you've been involved with, and we'll just kind of use that as a springboard to kind of kick us off towards this conversation that we're going to have today.
Yeah, let's do it. So my name's Eric. I grew up in Texas boy, born and raised. Hook 'em.
By the way,
Hook 'em all the way.
By the way, Texas Longhorns just won the Big 12 championship.
Exactly.
Love it. It's awesome. It's good.
Excited for that.
Yeah.
Grew up in Sulphur Springs, Texas at Central Baptist Church my whole life. Moved up here to go to BBC. Was part of BBC from 03 to 07. Met my wife, Melissa, here. We've been married for almost 15 years. We'll be 15 years in July. We've got 3 kids, Tinsley, Reed, and Beckham, 9, 7, and 4. Very cool. And I've been at Seminole ever since I was at BBC. I started there when I was a student at BBC, graduated, became the junior high intern in 2007, worked with Chris Highfill. When he left to go start Grace River in O'Fallon in 2012, they asked me to step in and be the student pastor. Cool. So I've been the student pastor for almost 9 years now.
Okay, so you mentioned, so it was Chris was there, was the youth pastor, and then you stepped in to fill his role as student pastor.
Yes.
So what was that like, kind of going from Chris stepping into his shoes into that role after having been under his ministry?
Yeah.
There.
It was definitely interesting because Chris is someone who God has used to do some great things. Yeah. And so for me, it was a little unnerving at first, knowing that you were going to replace Chris Highfill. Not really replace, but just coming along after him. And so I think there was some of that maybe uneasiness at first that you have to kind of be like Chris. Yeah. But one of the great things was I learned a lot from Chris, just serving alongside him, helping him out, walk through things that really made me a better student pastor. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, one of the things I always love to ask people, especially youth pastors, right, is have you ever been on a mission trip? And if so, where have you been? Give us a little bit of a breakdown of a trip or two maybe that you've been on. What was it like? Where did you go? And then tell us a little bit about what impact did that have on your life?
Okay.
So
I've been on 4 missions trips. So when I was at BBC, I was able to take a trip to Costa Rica.
Okay.
One of those summer missions trips. We spent time with the Barnes there in Costa Rica. Fantastic trip.
That had to be, yeah. Absolutely.
That was my very first missions trip. So for me, I grew up in a church that loved missions. Missions was always a vital part of our church, but to actually go and see and experience, that was a life-changing thing.
Well, and especially to go see the Barnes in Costa Rica. I mean, the work that they have going on down there is just incredible. If you're watching and you're looking for a place to go on a mission trip whenever things open back up, I highly encourage you to go see the Barnes down in Costa Rica. So you went to Costa Rica while you were at BBC. So where else? You said you've been on 4.
I've been on 4. We led some students a couple years ago before all the COVID stuff. We took them to Guatemala with Manna.
Okay.
Worked with Andrew and Bruce with Manna.
Sure.
That was my first experience actually taking students and helping lead a trip. So that was interesting from a youth leader standpoint, watching students kind of have that same excitement that I did.
Yeah, sure.
That first time taking the trip.
Yeah.
But probably the 2 trips that I've enjoyed the best is I've gone to Cuba twice.
Okay.
And those were, for me, just amazing
Yeah.
to go.
Sure.
Our church at Seminole has partnered with Manna to help build a feeding center at one of the
Yeah.
churches there in Havana. And so we were able to go. We went one time and dug holes and
Yeah.
kind of helped prepare it. We were able to go back and kind of see the building about 85% done.
Yeah.
But what I love about going to Cuba is when I go to Cuba, I think about the early church in Acts
Yeah.
and how these guys and these people don't have a whole lot.
Yeah,
You know, they still
sure.
live under communism,
Yeah.
but yet they take what little they have and they love God
Yeah.
and they love
And they
others.
love people.
And
That's right.
every time I go and I listen to them talk about how they go street evangelize or they're always talking
Yeah.
about their neighbors and talking about Christ, I go, to me, this is an example of what the early church was probably like.
Well, that's a good example of the Great Commission, just
Yeah.
right there. You know, their attitude towards reaching people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Cuba, man, that's one place I would love to go, but I've never been there, and so I'm kind of jealous of you on that part. I will say that. So, but you know, thinking of the places you've been, obviously everybody, you know, thinks, you know, it would be great to go visit this place or go visit that place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's kind of take a twist on that. Not from a vacation standpoint,
Okay.
right? So we're not talking about if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? If you could go on a mission trip anywhere in the world to go and serve people, is there anywhere that sticks out that you say, you know, I would kind of like to go here one day? And maybe not, maybe not. So again, just throwing that out there. So
That's tough because for me, I'm the kind of person that if there's a mission trip and I can take it,
you're in.
I want to go.
You want to go? Yeah.
Oh man, I
get that.
love going. I love experiencing different cultures. I love
Yeah,
seeing
sure.
what God is doing around the world. But if I had to narrow it down, and I hate having to narrow it down, probably more of a Latin America, South America type. Like, you know, I've been to some of those countries, so I've already kind
Yeah,
of experienced
sure.
that. But to me, I always go back to those. Going, man, I would love to experience that.
So what I'm hearing is Esteban, if you're watching Esteban Alvarez, you need to invite Eric to come
Please,
see you.
please, Esteban.
Yeah, absolutely. So Esteban, you need to invite both of us, and then maybe both of us can
Yeah.
come and hang out with you down there. So that's awesome, man. Okay, so let's get back into student ministry, right?
Okay.
So you've been a youth pastor for a long time.
Mhm.
I was a youth pastor for a long time, getting to work with students in 3 different churches, and I love student ministry. And I don't think you can be a youth pastor for any amount of time and not love students.
Yeah.
Right. So, and not love student ministry. And,
Mhm.
and student ministry is a different animal than a lot of other parts of the church in a lot of different ways. And we can unpack that sometime. But one question I would have for you as a youth pastor, you've been at Seminole now for how many years as far as
About
youth
14.
pastor? 14 total. And so why do you love being a youth pastor? What is it about student ministry that you just absolutely love? What is it?
I think the biggest thing that I love is life change.
Yeah.
I love it when a student gets it. I think that can be one of the frustrations at times of student ministry because you don't always see it there in the moment
That's right. That's very true.
because you want students to make that instant decision
Yeah.
and life change. But seeing students over the years get it, or having students that have graduated out of your ministry and are now serving alongside you, or you watch
Oh,
them
yeah.
growing up, like there's something about seeing students take a step in their relationship with Christ
Yeah.
that's when you go, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, and that's when you kind of look at it and you say, and really more, maybe you don't say it, but it's more of an attitude of, God, thank you for using me.
Yeah.
You know, as a youth pastor, I wanted to surrender my life to God to do whatever. You know, when I was little, I wanted to go to a mission field, and I always wanted to go to a mission field where no one had ever been before, right? And have the opportunity to take the gospel, and it's the same thing. But when I think through student ministry, it's kind of that same kind of attitude that says, God, I just want to be used of you,
Mhm.
and then to walk alongside students, and not just students, but talk about their families. What kind of impact can students have when students get it? What kind of impact can that make on a family?
Oh man, it can totally change the trajectory of a family.
Oh, yeah.
You think about it. I mean, while you have students that maybe their families have grown up in church and are part of church, many times you'll have students in your ministry that they get saved and they're the biggest example of Jesus that their family's going to have.
Yeah.
And so when they get it, and you talk about having that fire for
Oh,
God
yeah,
and that
sure.
excitement, man, they can totally change the course of a family's life.
Yeah, and I tell you what, just thinking back, because I can think of stories and individual students right now that
Mhm.
are just coming to mind. That's been the very definition of what happened. They came because they were invited by a student to church. They heard the gospel, they got saved, and then they went back, and then it made such an impact in their families that you see all kinds of different things happen.
Yeah.
Maybe mom got saved, or dad got saved, or maybe there were some family issues, and the family was able to walk through a period of healing, maybe from some past issues, all because a student was willing to go back and live their faith out at home.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I live for those kind of moments with students. And so it's always great to hear from another youth pastor, because inevitably a lot of the answers are the same.
Yeah.
From one person to the next, from one youth pastor to the next. Thinking about the period of that we've just kind of walked out of. I mean, you've got COVID-19. Student ministry looked a lot different.
Still is a little bit different, yeah.
COVID-19, and it still is, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, at least. Who knows what that's going to look like? But over the years, you see this kind of revolving door of issues that students face, right? So kind of speak to that for just a minute. What are some of the major challenges, even right now under COVID-19, that students are facing right now, and even maybe youth pastors or student pastors are facing and trying to help students kind of navigate this time period?
I think one of the biggest ones when you talk about COVID-19 is that some churches, I know we still have students that haven't been in our church in over a year now.
Yeah.
It hit in March and they haven't been back.
Yeah.
And you reach out to the students and their families will say, we don't know when we're coming back.
Yeah.
Maybe it's once there's a vaccine, maybe once there's a percentage of people. And so you have to kind of get creative on how you stay connected to them.
Oh, yeah.
Because some they have phones and you can reach out to. Others, you've got to talk to their parents to make sure it's okay to come by and see them. And so we've had to kind of get creative with some of those students. Like, how do we still stay connected? How do they still feel like they're a part of our group and they're a part of our community, even though they're not?
Yeah.
They physically can't be there.
Yeah, they can't be there. And for whatever reason, and that's regardless of what people think of mask or no mask or COVID-19 or, the political landscape of whatever, you have to deal in reality.
Yeah.
Right. And the reality is some families are scared. Some families won't come. Some families don't feel like it's safe to bring their families. And there's a lot of other reasons and a lot of things we could talk about. But the truth is we have to deal in the reality of the situation. And every student situation is a little bit different than the other student situation. So talk to me about kind of navigating that, because you say you have to get creative.
Yeah.
And, typically youth pastors are pretty creative anyway, because they have to be, right?
Yep.
So what does that look like when you have to get creative, not just from a broad spectrum, but even on an individual level from student to student, because the nature of our world that we're living in now?
Yeah, I think that makes it tough because as a student pastor, sometimes you have that perspective or mentality that you have to reach every student. Like, you have to be the one connecting at every door, every phone call. And so one of the things that we've tried to push with inside our ministry in this last year is really encouraging our leaders to stay connected with the students in their group.
Yeah.
If there's opportunities for myself or my wife that maybe we need to reach out, talk to the family, stop by and make a visit and stand outside the door and wave. We're all about that. But it's trying to train these leaders to go, hey, like, you've got a group of 5 or 6 kids.
Yeah.
Stay connected and stay invested in them over this time.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, because basically it's your job has become an equipper of your leaders. You're equipping your leaders to effectively minister to the students that they're more directly connected to.
Yeah.
And I love that from a role. So talk to me about your kind of desire and your thoughts on and how excited you get about equipping your leaders. And then what happens when your leader gets it?
Oh man, when your leader gets it, like, to me, that goes back to when a student gets it. Sure. When you're talking about how, like, student ministry and what you love, like, man, when a leader gets it and they're excited and you have a leader come to you and say, hey, can I plan an event with my group? Well, yeah, of course.
No, you can't.
Why would I ever say no to that?
If you're a leader out there and you want to plan an event for your small group or whatever, have at it.
We will always say yes. Within reason, we'll say yes, right?
Yes, within reason. Work with your youth pastor, but yes, absolutely. So no, I love those light bulb moments like that. One of the things that I think about when I think about student ministry, and we hear this all the time. You and I were talking about this earlier, is the fact that we hear a lot. Maybe you do too if you're watching today. You hear this idea that there's so many students that walk away from the faith once they leave high school. And having the opportunity to talk with a veteran, seasoned youth pastor right here, give us some of your thoughts around that idea. That's been challenging in the past.
Yeah.
Now we face another time where the challenging level goes up, and we have to navigate that through even different scenarios and in different situations. So kind of give me your thoughts a little bit on what that looks like for you. What are some reasons for that, or some things, just as a youth pastor, what kind of comes to your mind when you think about that problem?
I think there's a few things. I think one, especially if you live in an area where students go off to college,
Yeah.
many times you don't know maybe where there's a church that they can plug in
Yeah.
and get involved in. And so you have students that maybe were really faithful over the years in your group, but they move off to a new town,
And who knows what?
and who knows?
Yeah,
And
sure.
now they have this freedom to kind of, in a way, do whatever they want. And so
Yeah.
maybe church doesn't become as big of a priority,
Yeah.
because they have all these other things going
Yeah,
on,
there's a lot
or
going on in
jobs,
college.
or,
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. I think local church wise, I think it's really easy at times in student ministry to make youth group the thing that we tell students to do and be a part of. Like, you come
Yes.
to our Sunday groups, you
Yeah.
come to our Wednesday night youth service, and like, that's what you do.
The youth group becomes their church.
Yes, the youth group kind of becomes its own smaller version of a church.
Yeah, sure.
And what you do is you keep students from being able to serve in the church.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot, and you hear it that students are the church of today, or they'll say
Yeah,
tomorrow
yeah.
sometimes. But if the students are a part of the church for today, and they're not out serving in the church
today.
yeah, then they're not really a part of the church then, are they?
Right,
Like,
sure.
that's where my question's at. And so I think for us, and really I think in student ministry in general, it's, hey, how can we take these students who have these gifts and abilities that God has gifted them with and use them to equip
Oh,
the church
yeah.
today? Like, we've got students at our church who will lead on Sundays in our services,
Yeah.
whether singing, playing instruments, and you see that and you go, like, that helps a student get it.
Oh, yeah,
When they're
for
able
sure.
to understand that they can take what God has gifted them with and serve the church today.
Yeah.
Working in kids ministry, working in younger areas, working in greeting parking lots, whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
whatever.
Like, I think where we've seen students stick with it, it's been those that have been plugged in the
Yeah.
community, but also plugged in the church. Like,
Yeah.
they see that they've got gifts and abilities, and now they're going out and using them.
Well, in relationships that are outside of the student ministry,
Mm-hmm.
you talk about serving outside. Part of that is a relational aspect of that, of building relationships with other demographics within the church.
Yeah.
That provides them connections, and even accountability for when they graduate, they go to college, if they stay local and they stay in your church. It's those connections that can make a massive impact, in their lives. And I've always thought through this, and one of the things that I think we don't talk about a whole lot is the fact that high school is one of the most social times of a person's life, right? So students go through high school and they're involved in all kinds of school activities, extracurricular activities, school projects, all the different sports, band, whatever that may be, choir, the list is really endless.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But then you add to that student ministry in a church, and student ministry in a church many times is one of the most active ministries. I mean, you're all the time doing activities, events, one-on-one conversations on an ongoing basis with the youth pastor and your leaders. And then all of a sudden graduation hits.
Yeah.
All of a sudden graduation hits, and your entire church experience is different now. You walk into a college ministry that may or may not have as much going on as you had there. You may or may not have all the connections and friends that you had in student ministry that transfer with you into the college ministry, because so many of your friends may go to another college somewhere else in another location. And so you walk through that time, and anytime you go through a major stage in life, you kind of have to come to terms with things with you, who you are in that new stage. And so you're dealing with identity issues, you're dealing with self-esteem issues, you're dealing with a transition out of an extremely social part of your life to, let's just face it, college is social. There's a lot that goes on, but it's different. It's not the same. And so talk just a little bit about that. Have you seen that play out, in students' lives, to where that transition just became such a hard transition that it made it easier for students to kind of step back and get involved in other stuff? Have you seen that play out?
Yeah, I think we've seen it. I'll talk with students some, and especially after the first couple of months of being out of our group, because there's that transition time, and you want them to get plugged in, you want them to get connected. in that next area of ministry. But you and I were talking about it earlier. I think it starts all the way back in kids. Like you have kids ministry and they spend a little bit of time together, but then kids move up into student ministry and they get excited because they know that, man, you're going to be meeting every week. You're going to have these fun activities. You're going to have camp.
And they're looking forward to that.
And they're looking forward to that. And you have it for your 4 to 6, depending on what your student ministry looks like, years. And then you graduate and then it's, well, now you're an adult.
And what does that look like?
And you go from maybe having these leaders who are investing in you each and every week, week in, week out, to maybe that's not the case anymore because you have maybe a college leader and his wife or spouse, or maybe they have a couple of leaders, but that's it. And then, like you said, you've got kids who they go off to school somewhere else. So their friends that were helping them come week in and week out are no longer there. Or you live in a college town and you have these other students that now come in. And so there's just that, well, how do I fit in here? Because it's not the same as what student ministry was.
Oh, yeah. And church is such a relational thing anyway. I mean, church is, in many ways, is about relationships with people. It's that accountability and it's that community. You know, it's that living life in connection with our interdependence on our other believers, you know, for accountability and support. And when students go off to college and they lose what they've always had, they're dealing with newfound freedom. Yeah. They're dealing with the struggle for independence and what to do with that. They're dealing with how they view themselves, and how they view themselves is going to define how they interact with the world around them. And, you know, I just think through that. And I think sometimes it's easy for us to say that the problem with that transition is the professors in college. I think it's easy to say that the problem is the influences at college. And I think where all of those have impact, I think we discount the lack of continuity sometimes between student ministry and, I'll just say, adult church, for lack of better words, whether it goes through a college ministry or not. So for me, and I know you and I talked about it, is how can we bridge those gaps, and how can we make more intentional connections between college ministry or even adult ministry and student ministry. So we have some of those relationships that help carry us through those times of transitions. You know, I think through that, and I just think there's a lot of problems that we've seen and students face over the years. And for some, they may say, you know, I wouldn't want to be a teenager now because everything's so much worse than it's ever been before, you know. And well, where there's definitely truth to that. There's no doubt about that. And there's issues that our students face that maybe we didn't face when we were in high school back in the day, or even those that are older than us. But there are some things that are consistently there. Yeah. You know, who am I? Where do I belong? How do I fit? You know, all of those kind of issues. So talk to me about what you've seen over the years and how to help a student in those areas.
Yeah, I think, you know, you hear that a lot from when you have volunteers. You have people that want to serve, or you go to people and ask them to serve. It's, hey, man, would you want to serve in student ministry? It's like, oh man, I remember what life was like in middle school or in high school, and I don't want to handle that at all.
Yes. But
I'm quick to go, but you experienced it.
Yes.
And some of the same struggles that you had, whether it was self-esteem, whether it was spiritual issues, these same students are going through that.
Oh, yeah.
It might look a little bit different.
Right.
But a lot of it is still the same.
Yeah, the outcome's still the same.
Yeah. And so how can you take your experience of where God has brought you? Yeah. Because that's what a student needs. We talk about it. We talk about it a lot with our group, and just students, especially in junior high and high school, are at this age where, while they love their parents and they like their parents, the parents aren't the main person they go to for their stuff anymore. Sure. And they need an adult. They need somebody that they can walk through life with. Yeah. And that's where the importance is for us to be able to have that community and have that time, whether it's in a small group or a one-on-one with the student, just to be able to build that relationship where they feel comfortable to come and want to talk to you. Like, I've got a student that's he's been a part of my life since 5th grade. Yeah. Because we do 5th through 12th grade at our church. And we've gotten to the point in our relationship now where he'll just text me or call me out of the blue and go, hey, can we hang out today? And it's yes. Yes. Because I know there's something that he's going through. I know something has happened at school or something that's happened at home, just because we've built that consistency together, and he knows he has somebody. I don't know that I always have the best answers, but he's got somebody that wants to listen.
Yeah, sure.
and wants to help walk
Yeah,
through
that
that.
wants to help walk through that.
And that's what students are looking for. That's what they need, that there's going to be somebody who won't necessarily judge them,
Yeah.
but can help give them advice and help them walk through, because even in their faith, they're at that age where they're beginning to go, okay, well, this is what I've heard all my life about God.
Right.
And this is what I've heard my parents say. This is what I've seen my parents live out. And I don't know if this is necessarily matching up with what I think about God or what the church says. So how do I know what's true?
Yeah.
And it's having that outside person that can just help them walk through those questions.
Yeah. And what I love about that dynamic is a youth pastor is not their parent. And a youth pastor is not taking a place of a parent.
No.
We're coming alongside bringing mentorship to a student in ways that can help them with issues that they're facing, that can come alongside and help parents. And so the more support and the more stability a student can experience down that path, the better it is.
Yeah.
Across the board for everyone. Then all of a sudden that's a help to parents. It's a help to students. And that's why I love student ministry, right? I love the moments. You talked about the light bulb moments and those, man, I live for those. But I love those moments when we're able to get in and help a student overcome an issue that helps them grow a closer relationship with their family.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a role that a youth pastor can play. And it's just a really cool situation when things like that get to play out. I think about all the issues that students face. And I don't know, if you're watching today, click subscribe, first of all, like and share this video, and help us get the word out about our 938 podcast. A lot of great stuff that you've heard the last several weeks and obviously for the rest of this year. And today, if you're just joining us, we're here talking with Eric Starrett from Seminole, talking about student ministry, and going back though to just some of those issues. I think I hear all the time students feel entitled.
Yeah.
You get the idea of entitlement. You get the idea of just general identity related issues, self-esteem related issues, and there's no doubt that how we view ourselves is definitively going to impact the way we interact with the world around us. And sometimes it's easy for students to get so focused on what they want to change about themselves and what's going on and all these different things that it becomes overwhelming. And so that's why one of the things, kind of going back to this Hope Beyond Borders program that we've developed here at the mission office, is mission trips.
Yeah.
I've taken a number of groups of students to the mission field in various places around the world. And there's just something that happens when you take a student and you get them out of their normal routine. It's almost like camp. You get them out of the normal routine. You get them out of the normal kind of attitudes and around their normal groups of friends. You separate them. You have a chance to get them apart and really focus on what God's doing in their life. And then outside of camp, you have the ability on a mission trip to put them in another culture.
Exactly.
Where they have the opportunity to really see how blessed we are in America and see how some of the issues that they think are major, massive issues are maybe not quite as massive and as major as they think. So give me some of your thoughts about that. For me, I always thought that a mission trip was one of the best things that I've ever seen that could deal with some of the issues that students are facing by default, just because the situations that they're placed in. So kind of give me some of your thoughts on that, because I know you and I, we have a lot of very similar thoughts about this as well, but just kind of walk through some of that.
I think, one of the things I think about too is even in the pre-missions trip process, students are having to raise money, because a lot of times families can't commit X amount of dollars to go on a 4, 5, 6, 7 day trip. And so students are having to learn, whether it's through working, whether it's through, bake sales, things at the church, like they're having to learn to trust God because for whatever reason, they feel really strongly that God wants them to go on this trip. So they're having to trust God initially in this process. And so for many of them, once they're able to raise that money, you go, oh, this is cool that God answered this prayer. Like, I'm able to go on this trip now. And then you take them to an area where, one, they can't use their phones. Can't really call back home.
It's one of my favorite things about traveling internationally.
Fantastic.
Is when you take off, the phone goes up and you couldn't call somebody if you wanted to. It's good.
So you're able to get away from everything.
Yeah, sure.
And I know when we took our trip with our students, we would take this time each night to just kind of debrief and talk about where they were at. And I think every day the students would go, man, it's just amazing to see how blessed I am. And not in a prideful way. I think for many of them, it's realizing for the first time that as Americans, we have a lot. Even those of us that feel like we don't have a lot,
We have a lot.
we have a lot.
Yeah.
And God has definitely blessed us, whether it's financially, whether it's family, whether it's church. I was telling you earlier about when we took them to Guatemala, and we were able to give them money to go grocery shopping
Yeah.
for some families.
Yeah.
And so we were able to go into this area where basically these houses were built out of dirt and mud and maybe some like almost like metal.
Yeah. The
For
tin,
a
the
roof,
rusted
the
out
tin,
tin.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're able to take these people these groceries who maybe don't have a whole lot to get groceries or to give them extra supplies. And then we took them these buckets that Manna had made that would help them get clean water, because many of them didn't have clean water.
Yeah.
And just to be a part of that and to see these families, how excited they got,
Yeah.
how blessed they felt. Many of them began to cry as we were showing them how it made clean water.
made clean
And to
water.
have students see that moment, they go, light bulb.
Yeah.
Like they go, oh man, like this is
A defining moment.
a defining moment for me. Or going and being a part of orphanages and just spending time with these kids who don't have families, who don't have anything,
Yeah.
but they're playing soccer together, and just the
Yeah,
joy
sure.
in these kids' hearts.
Or even the students for the first time that get up and give a testimony in a church service.
Oh yeah.
Or the ones that may sing in English in a service that's in a different language.
Mm-hmm.
And the courage that takes, but what God does with their willingness to do that in a different context.
Yeah.
It brings it seems to be, a lot of times that brings a whole nother level of confidence in their life. And it's those kind of things that deal with a lot of the identity issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the ways that God just reassures students as to, hey, I'm this is what you've been created to do.
Yeah.
Is to take the gospel around the world. I mean, that's what our job is. And it's like when they're on a mission trip, they see it, they experience it, versus just hearing about it from missionaries. Now they're doing it, and it gives them a sense of ownership that inevitably for what I've seen in the past, and maybe you've seen it as well, that comes back and will make an impact in the church.
Yeah. Well, you talked about it, like you think about it from a church perspective, and many times kids are taught to give money to missions.
Sure.
So you have Faith Promise.
That's right.
You have missionaries that'll come in and give testimonies, or they'll show videos. And it's one thing to see it.
Yeah.
It's one thing to go, okay, I know I should give to it.
That's right.
But once you go and
It's a little bit
experience it,
different.
you go, oh man, like this is what missions is all about. Like this family has trusted God to go and move across the world to reach people for Jesus. Like, man, not only does that get me excited about what God could do in my life, but I want to help be a part of that. I want to give. I want to champion it with my friends.
Oh yeah, for sure. And having that ownership and having that newfound sense of pride that, hey, I've been involved with this and God's used me because I was willing, not from a prideful standpoint, but just an understanding that God wants to use us even in our imperfection.
Yeah.
To take the gospel and reach other people, and to see that in their own life, and to see that with their own eyes, and see the impact that makes in the lives of people in another culture, another country, another location around the world, can be some pretty incredible things that God can do through that. That's why I love mission trips. I love taking students on mission trips. That's probably my favorite thing to do. And so that's one of the reasons why with the BBFI Mission Office, we created this whole program called Beyond Borders. Was coming from the heart of saying, hey, how can we connect students to mission trips and missionaries that are supported by churches, by their churches? And so we have, unfortunately, COVID-19 hit us pretty hard last year. We were all set to launch everything last May. We had registration lined up and ready to go for mission trips that were going to happen this summer. And then obviously with travel restrictions and all that, COVID kind of shut all of that down. But here's what I'll tell you today is we're already looking at what things are going to look like for when things open back up.
That's awesome.
So as things open back up, you're going to hear more and more about Beyond Borders and the trip opportunities that are there for students, but not just students, for multi-generational trips, or for college students, or for young adults, or any other age group of adults that that are wanting to take trips in a church. And so we're excited about those opportunities that are coming up, and looking forward to sharing that with everybody as we get a little bit further down the road in this COVID-19 world that we live in. And so excited about the opportunities that are coming up and what that looks like. I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago, though. You talked about how some of the issues with the transition from high school into, again, lack of better words, adult church or even college ministry, is the need to involve students in the greater ministry of the church.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about that from a mission standpoint.
Okay.
Right. So you mentioned it. Well, I mentioned it. We kind of alluded to it a few times, that it's different when a student just sits back and hears a missionary talk about it, or maybe gives some of the money that they've earned because they're, out of their faith promise offering, or they want to help with a project or whatever. But it's different when they're involved.
Yes.
It's different when they are involved on the mission field. It's different when they're involved in the church. It makes an impact in their connection to the church for a lifelong experience in church, and it helps with those connections. But let's talk about that with the missions program.
Okay.
Give us your thoughts on that. How can a youth pastor, if we got a youth pastor watching today, student pastor, that says, hey, I want to involve students in the mission program in my church, just kind of walk us through some thoughts down that path.
Yeah, I think it depends really on what the missions culture is at your church. Like I think back to as a kid, my family would always give me money each and every week for a little bit for like a tithe and also for Faith Promise.
Yeah.
And so growing up, I always understood giving to Faith Promise.
Yeah.
I didn't really know maybe where it went to and what it was about, but I knew, hey, you give money to missions.
Right.
But it wasn't until I actually went on a trip and I saw missions firsthand.
Yeah.
And I was able to experience it and see what's going on that I went, wow, like this is something I want to get behind.
Yeah, sure.
And I think the struggle at times is, well, how do we get that with students?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to tell students, hey, give money to Faith Promise.
Right.
And they go, well, maybe I don't have a job yet. I don't make money, or I have a job. Why would I give my money to that?
Sure.
Like I have.
Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah, what's that look like? Or, you have missionaries that'll come through your church and we'll talk or show videos. And so you get a little bit of it, but I don't know how much that's enough to get students excited and behind missions.
Right.
And so I know that's a struggle that we've had. Like, how do you
Sure.
get students more involved, especially in a time where you can't go on mission trips? I've tried for the last 2 years
To do
to
trips.
go on a
Yeah,
mission
sure.
trip. And anytime we'd make any
Yeah,
progress,
sure.
it was, hey, you can't travel anymore.
Yeah.
Or this year it's, well, we're not sure if we can
What
travel.
that's gonna look like.
So how can we prepare something if we're not even going to be
Yeah.
able to go? And so it's trying to get creative in, well, how can we make missions maybe even a part of everything that we do?
Yeah, sure.
So it's not taking time out of each youth service to say, hey, it's our missions moment.
Right.
But
Sure.
what can we do to get kids hearing about it, seeing it,
Yeah.
whether it's having missionaries that are a part of our church?
Yeah.
You mentioned the Alvarez's earlier.
Yeah, sure.
Their boys are the same age as a lot of the students in our student ministry,
Yeah.
and many of them, because they're out of our church,
Yeah.
know them. And so it's looking for opportunities that maybe we can connect
Make
these
those
missionaries there. So whether it's a Zoom call
Yeah.
or it's a FaceTime where they can have those conversations
Yeah.
and kind of see missions actually happen.
Taking place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think back as a kid, and a lot of the videos and slideshows that we would see would be all these pictures of countries.
Yeah. Right.
And maybe you don't get
Sure.
to see the actual ministry happening.
Yeah.
And so if there's ways for them to connect with that,
Yeah.
or they could talk about stories of somebody's life that was changed, you
Yeah,
go,
sure.
oh man, like this is happening.
Yeah, and even missionaries helping students relate to what student life is like on the country in the field that they're going
Yeah.
to. Things like that are engaging. And then when I think about greater involvement, a lot of churches have mission teams, right? How can you get students connected to your missions team that helps plan events? Maybe they do read the prayer letters. Maybe they do watch the update vlogs and different things, the way that missionaries communicate and stuff now. Maybe they are those that help put together the details of a missions month or a missions conference or whatever missions emphasis that is. Maybe they're part of the team that helps communicate with their missionary kids.
Yeah.
Maybe they're the ones that help do a missions part of a vacation Bible school or something. Helping those students build connections in other parts of the ministry through the missions program will give them relationships with people that they would not normally have the opportunity to get connected to.
I know you and I talked about it earlier. As a church, something that we've tried to do this last year within all of our groups, so from kids, students, all the way up, is we've tried basically adopting a missionary.
Yeah.
family.
Sure.
And so you're able to not just read a prayer letter, but you're able to make these personal
Build
connections.
relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, our students would have this relationship with a missionary that
Yeah.
maybe they've read some letters about, but chances are this missionary isn't coming back from the field for a long period of time.
Yeah.
But through technology now, they're able to build a relationship
to
and
do that.
see missions happening.
Yeah.
It's not just something they hear about. Virtually, they're able to experience it also.
Well, and you know what? And you mentioned virtually, and we talk about that. That's one of the things you and I have talked about are these virtual mission trips. One of the other things that we're working on with Beyond Borders is this plan for virtual mission trips. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody. So
Spoil the surprise.
Yeah, talk to your leaders before this podcast airs. But we're actually gonna work with Seminole on doing a virtual mission trip, and I'm excited about that and what that looks like. But having those capabilities aren't something that was even really possible or even thought of as much a year ago as it is now. And so when I think about some of the blessings of COVID-19, it gives us a way to take an incredibly large world, right? That sometimes seems a lot smaller than it actually is, but then at the same time to connect students to live interactive environments that can connect them to mission trips in ways that aren't expensive.
Yeah.
But that can also be very meaningful and very impactful, that leads them beyond just watching a video on a screen, but gives them interaction. And so excited about that. And you're going to be hearing more, if you're watching today, you're going to be hearing more about virtual mission trips coming in the coming months and stuff. And one of the things that we're going to work on is a package deal that we can get out to all of our churches to where you can put on your own virtual mission trip. And then we're here as a mission office to help any way that we can to make that happen. And so excited about that. And so just when I think student ministry, and I a lot of guys have told me over the years, I've never taken students on a mission trip. I've never really got them connected to missions. We do our part in the missions conference or whatever it is. And what goes on in my mind is I think, man, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
What a missed opportunity to really make an impact in student lives that can transcend even them staying just in high school, but that can also help them stay connected in their faith with Christ and to the church once they leave high school.
I think it grows your missions program of your church.
Sure.
You're building up in that next generation.
Right.
Hey, this has always been important to us, but here's why it's important. So now you're raising up these next generation leaders who are going to be champions of missions and are going to be the ones that are wanting to lead trips, who are going to be wanting to give, and hopefully even some of them wanting to go.
Yeah, surrendering, saying, God, I'll go if you call me. I'm prepared to go. And being willing to do that. Man, Eric, it's been great to have you today. You and I have talked quite a bit about Beyond Borders, and just want to encourage you, if you're watching today and you want more information on Beyond Borders, you can go to our website. GoBBFImissions.com is our Beyond Borders website. But at the same time, you can also go to our online store. So if you go to store.bbfimissions.com, we have Beyond Borders resources on there for you. So we have a digital packet. It's called the Go Pack. That is a mission trip planning guide that walks you through start to finish everything you need to know about planning a mission trip. And then we also have another resource on there that I love, is called the Mission Journal. And this is a 30-day journal that's designed to be paired with a mission trip. So you have 12 days, I think it is, of journaling leading into a mission trip, enough for 14 days of journaling on a mission trip, and then 5 days on the backside of a mission trip to give you a full the full capabilities of capturing what God does in your life on a mission trip. That's cool. I'm excited about that resource. You can check that out at store.bbfimissions.com. One of the other things that we've been working on is just resources for churches in general. And so we actually had a missionary, Shane Salmon, come in, and we went to an airstrip down in Ozark, Missouri, and got to film a 4-part small group Bible study on missions with Shane. We're getting that put together, and it's going to be available before long, and looking forward to getting that out there. But there's a video that comes with a small group leader guide and discussion questions. And so we've got a lot of great resources coming out this year and next year for Beyond Borders, for student ministry. Again, it's all geared towards helping students get connected to missions. And then we can't have the 938 podcast without talking about October 3rd. And I know you and I talked about this earlier.
We did.
But October 3rd is 938 Sunday. And so we have this Project 938 where we are starting at the May Fellowship meeting. Churches can register. And then we have resources galore, like tons of resources, videos from missionaries, national pastors, people talking about the need for more missionaries. And it all goes back to the 938 challenge that Brother Conrad put together. That is praying for more missionaries. Matthew 9:38, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he'd send forth laborers into his harvest. It's a prayer request from Jesus. And we're taking that prayer request and we're asking all the churches of the fellowship, both stateside and internationally, all of our missionaries to join us on October 3rd. For more information, you can go to project938.world and take a look at that website and get all the updates and things on there. But then during the May Fellowship meeting, you can register on that page and get your church connected. And then from there, you'll get all kinds of resources. And then on October 3rd, there's resources for every age group of the church.
That's cool.
And I'm excited about what that can do for our churches, our students, our people. And then the idea of thinking about people from all over the world on one day coming together and asking God to continue to call and send more missionaries.
That's awesome.
And excited about what that looks like. So, man, Eric, thank you for coming and
thanks for
being
having
a part of this. And we could talk student ministry for days. I love talking
forever.
shop. And if you are out there and you are a student pastor, I encourage you to connect with Eric online and give him a call. And I'm sure I'm signing you up for this, but I'm sure he'd love to talk shop with you, give you some ideas.
I'll talk shop anytime, anywhere.
Absolutely. And same here. So give me a call, hit me up on Facebook or shoot me a text or send me an email, whatever. And would love to connect with you. Again, if you haven't yet, click subscribe and like and share this video. And then we will look forward to seeing you next week on the 938 podcast. Again, Eric, thanks for coming. And
thanks for having me.
We'll see you on here again.
I'd love to be back
here before long. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and we'll see you next week.